Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Mindset Matters. I'm really excited for today's episode because we have with us Emily Cordes. Emily is an international yoga teacher and teacher mentor. She recently just returned from Mexico, which was her latest yoga adventure, which we'll talk about. Emily grew up as a dancer, and she's always enjoyed exploring different types of movement before falling in love with yoga. She bravely decided to travel by herself to India back in 2016 to complete her 300-hour yoga training, and she now participates in retreats all over the world, inspiring people from all walks of life to explore movement through yoga. So thank you for being here, Emily.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
Awesome. So I thought we could start a little bit just talking about Mexico. How was that experience? What was it like? I would just love to hear a little bit about it.
Yeah, for sure. So I was leading a 200-hour training there. So 200-hour trainings are usually 2 weeks to 3 weeks. This one was 2 weeks, and we had 10 students there. So it was a nice intimate group, kind of good size where you can get some one-on-one time with everybody every day. And it was actually the first time that I've led a training all on my own. I'm used to having a few teachers on the course, so this was really, an exciting step for me. And yeah, it was wonderful. Really beautiful area. It was on Isla Mujeres, just off of Cancun, and yeah, just soaked it all in.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. So you were there for about 2 or 3 weeks?
Yeah, just over 2 weeks. The course was 2, and then I was, a couple days on each end.
Yeah, and I feel like that's such a great way just to even explore the different areas. And I feel like 10 students sounds perfect. You just get to know everyone. And did you feel like, yeah, you were just able to talk to everyone like closely and everything?
Yeah, it's nice that way because, on a teacher training, people, of course, you want to learn a lot and you will. So every day is pretty full. And then, of course, that always leads like, okay, well, what about this? And there's always little kind of side notes, I guess, to make. So I like with a smaller group, you have the chance to kind of go off topic a little bit sometimes, still, within the context of yoga and life and everything. But it does allow a little bit of flexibility that way. So I always love that.
Okay, that's awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. That's super exciting. And congratulations on your first training by yourself. That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
So one thing I saw on your website that I thought was super relatable and something I definitely have experienced, but when you first kind of tried yoga, you actually thought it was boring to you.
Yeah.
And I can totally relate to that because I'm also very active, and it's hard for me to slow down sometimes. So I just want to hear a bit about your process of like, how did you push yourself to stick with it and end up obviously like falling in love with it?
Yeah, it's funny because most other teachers I speak with loved it from day one. So I always feel a bit like, ooh, my story's a little different, Yeah, so my mom started taking me to classes, and it was when I kind of stopped dancing competitively. Like it was just a natural end to that phase of my life. But, that was like 20 hours of my week suddenly freed up. So looking for something different, my mom's like, oh, let's go to yoga. She was already going to classes herself. And yeah, like you said, same. I didn't find it very interesting at first. It was pretty boring, and I thought it was really slow, and we kept repeating the same things again. And to me, that didn't make any sense. But somehow, I just kept feeling a draw to it. I kept going, even though I kind of thought, this again. And I was already teaching fitness classes then too. So I was looking to do like a little more training, and I wanted to learn more about anatomy and how the body works. So a friend of mine suggested, well, you should do a yoga training. And I was pretty new to practicing yoga then. And I was like, no. Like I'm thinking like, TRX or kettlebells or something, something like really dynamic. I want to do a training like that. She's like, I don't know. I think you should do a yoga training and, stay open to that. So I just kind of had that idea like on the back burner for a while. But yeah, finally I kind of found different teachers that I resonated with a little more. So other teachers who had a dance background and kind of sequenced things differently than the previous classes I had been to. So it just brought in that creative element that I think I was missing at first. And that just opened it up for me. I realized, oh, it can be, my own. I can kind of take in my dance background with this. And that just opened up all the doors.
Okay, that's really interesting. I've never really heard or like heard someone speak about how the different instructors kind of make a big difference, but that makes sense because it's like I guess in any sport, it's like your coaches make a big difference. So,
Yeah.
when you now teach yourself, do you kind of try to do that where you're making it your own and you're trying to connect with the people you're around?
Yeah, I think I definitely have like a unique style that comes from my dance background. So a lot of flowy elements, and I bring in a lot of creative transitions. And because of that, I tend to attract a lot of people who are like me in that way. So a lot of former dancers or people who, like you, just really like moving. So
Yeah.
of course I teach slower styles too, but my main kind of style that I ground into is vinyasa, and that allows for a lot of this freedom of movement. Yeah, so I think I bring that into my own teaching, and then because of that, draw in the people who are looking for that style.
Okay, that's awesome. I love that. Um, one thing I want to share that you had written on your website. By the way, I love your website. I think
Thank
it's
you.
super well done, and it really gives a good insight into like who you are and your own journey. So I really enjoyed, and I honestly felt inspired just like looking through it. I was like, wow, I'm really excited to talk to her. So
Appreciate
just
that.
yeah, kudos to your website. It's
Thank
great.
you. I'll give a little
Um,
shout out to Brian Blatnicki for that. He's in London.
okay.
He's done my branding and website.
Okay, awesome. And we'll definitely get into where people can find you and all that at the end.
Perfect.
So
Yep, no
people
worries.
can find you, yeah. But one thing you said was for you, yoga's not just about like moving your body, but it's how it makes you feel and how it connects you to something more significant. So, what is this kind of more significant thing that you feel connected to through your practice?
The practice of yoga for me really opened up spirituality to me as well. It wasn't really something I like consciously was into before, but the more I practiced yoga, the more I just kind of felt this like this something else, something couldn't really put a finger on. It's like you said, like traveling to India for the first time on my own. It was just a lot of trust, but somehow I just trusted it was going to be okay. And yeah, so the practice goes so much beyond the body and just the poses into really a way of living. And there's so many lessons we learn on the mat, even just simple things like, okay, just take the practice as you can today. Take the options that you need. But then, of course, that so easily translates to our lives. Like, okay, just do what you can today. Modify. Make things work for you. So that's kind of helped me find just a more spiritual way of being, I guess, and just trusting and being more open to all the connections around, like even just simply connections to nature and how good you feel being outside. It's like, okay, there's a reason for that. There's something to that. So all that kind of stemmed from my practice, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I love that because I think even for me, like I've been on this kind of journey of presence and I talk a lot about, mindset and the way we think about things is really important. And I think with yoga, it's a lot of like mind body connection and grounding yourself. And so I love that. And I think it's awesome that you get to do this like all the time.
Thank you.
So you kind of touched on this, but where have you found yoga and like your practice of kind of grounding yourself translate to your life? Like I know you mentioned about nature and everything, but do you find it even in the way you interact with people and just has it helped you grow as a person?
Definitely. Like you asked how or where in my life, like all the time, all day, basically. Of course, it doesn't mean I'm like great at it all the time, but it's a practice. So yeah, definitely in my interactions with other people, interactions with myself, like some of the kind of pillars of yoga are non-harming, which can also be seen as kindness, right? Truthfulness, things like that. So it's, grounding myself into these themes in my, I like to say, life practice, which is really just a yoga practice because it is a way of living. It's not just what we think of as rolling out a mat and doing an hour class. Like it's so much more beyond that. But in life, it's really helped me in times of stress or challenges, whether those are big or small, like even just sitting in traffic can make us really stressed. And, the practice of presence and awareness can help us, okay, just take a breath, it's fine, and it's out of my control. So,
Yes.
so what are you going to do? So it's really helped me, with those small little things to the big things too, of course.
Okay. Yeah, I love that. I always use traffic as an example. I think it's so easy, but it's so easy to let these little things ruin your whole day. And so I
Yeah,
think it's just the practice of like even just slowing down through yoga is a great way to just teach yourself, oh, I can slow down in like other areas and not be so like stressed all the time. So I really like that.
yeah, totally.
So I want to talk a little bit about your kind of international teaching and kind of how that stemmed and started. But I guess before that, so for a little context, Emily and I actually went to teachers college together. We didn't really talk a lot. We had maybe some mutual friends, but
Yeah.
I'm curious to know about, what was your decision into going into teachers college and maybe exploring classroom teaching kind of before making this full transition
Right, yeah, for
to
sure.
yoga.
Teaching was something I always wanted to do from like since I was 5 years old because my mom was a teacher. So, that was kind of what I saw growing up and even in high school and university, like volunteering at her schools and everything. So it was always something I was drawn to. I love working with kids and obviously I love teaching, as a broader sense. So I took a year off between university and teachers college. And in that year is when I did my first yoga training. So I kind of didn't know at that time how big yoga was going to be in my life. Even when
Sure.
I did my training, I still thought, okay, I'll teach a couple classes a week and that's kind of it. And I'll school teach full time.
Mm.
So that's how I kind of got into like school teaching and teachers college and everything. And once I started, I was still teaching yoga on the side. I've done a couple long-term like LTOs, done a lot of supply teaching, but I never took the full dive in to apply for a full-time permanent job because I just felt, even when I was in the long-term placements, I didn't have the energy that I was hoping for to still teach yoga because it is, teaching is so demanding.
Yeah.
It's wonderful, love it, but it really took my full energy. So it was kind of something that I didn't really plan. Like I thought I would be a full-time school teacher, and then it just kind of presented itself once I started teaching that wasn't going to work out, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I like that you're able to kind of say that because I think a lot of people are in this transition of like, oh, I love working with students or I love teaching. But you get there and sometimes the expectation versus reality is really different. I've definitely experienced this too.
Totally.
Um, and yeah, it does take a lot of your energy. So it's hard to kind of do other things. And so I think that's great that you're able to recognize, you know what, maybe this isn't for me and it's okay to kind of explore something new. Um,
Right. And still, it'll probably continue to be a part of my life. I'm still supply teaching and, kind of popping in here and there. So I love the flexibility to be able to do that and knowing that I can do that without having to make it my full-time job.
yeah, that's great. And I love that you're still exploring it as something like, hey, if I have time and I want to do it, that's awesome. But it doesn't need to be full time, even though that's what you originally kind of planned for, right?
Exactly.
Um, and this kind of goes into like, I guess the idea of kind of like following like a stable job versus following your passion a little bit more. And obviously, yoga, I would think it's fair to say, is like your passion. So, how did it come up that you kind of started getting opportunities to do international stuff? Did it just present itself, or did you kind of have to take this leap of faith? Like, did that kind of come about?
Yeah, a little bit of both, and a lot of trust, like we were kind of talking about before. My first experience teaching internationally was in India after I did my second training there at the very beginning of 2020. So I had a chance to kind of shadow the main teacher on the teacher training course and learn from her and also be teaching classes. So that was a really great experience and kind of gave me that footing that I needed to be able to take the next leaps. Of course, that took us into the pandemic, so there was a big pause on the international teaching, but that's okay. So then I kind of just decided, it was kind of during that time that I thought, well, I really want to lean into this. And that's when I was kind of transitioning out of teaching a little bit, school teaching, and deciding, okay, I want to travel and I know I want to host international retreats, but how do I even start, right? So I knew I wanted to host in Nicaragua for my first retreat. And I had originally been looking at Costa Rica, actually, but as I was just kind of looking online, I realized like, oh, Nicaragua's quite a bit cheaper and I could maybe travel longer, and very beautiful as well. So I ended up there in February 2022. And I thought I would just kind of like look around and find some retreat centers and see, get a feel, see if it's somewhere I might host. But I just fell in love, and a place I was staying actually ended up offering me a little work exchange to teach classes for the hotel. Then I could stay and have food and accommodation. So I ended up staying longer than I planned. And that was kind of my first experience, like doing that sort of teaching abroad.
And I feel like you just get to meet probably so many different types of people.
Exactly.
And how has that even just opened your eyes to the world, and how has it changed the way you see the world? Because sometimes we're so in our bubble, and travel just, I think, opens up so much for us.
Definitely. Even just seeing like how so many people live differently and work differently, even travelers, as well as, of course, the locals, like living completely differently than how I live at home. So that definitely opened up my eyes, like, oh, I can do this. That was the first time that I kind of felt like, oh, this is possible. I see other people doing it. They're, similar situations. So yeah, it's possible. And then, of course, traveling opens up your eyes, like, to realize, oh, I actually don't need that many things. I don't need, when you travel and see a different way of living and experience that, then, of course, that's just like a world of change, really, to your mindset, if you're open to it.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's so much value in just learning from different cultures. And yeah, when you travel, it's like you can't take everything with you. And I guess if you're in a place for long enough too, you kind of forget about things that were left back home. And you're
Definitely.
like, oh, wait, like I have all these extra things that, yeah, don't really serve me or I don't necessarily need. I love that so much. So what advice would you kind of give anyone who's looking to maybe make a change either in their career or in some aspect of their life, and they're kind of like feeling stuck, or they're not sure what or where to even get started?
Yeah, it's tough when you're feeling that desire to change, but kind of not knowing what or how. I think you need to kind of take some time and go inward if you're not sure what you want to do. Take some time and reflect, like, what are the things that light me up? How can I do more of that? Because sometimes in our full-time jobs and everything, we don't have time. Like, even I was saying, for my own teaching, I didn't really have time to teach yoga and show up the way I wanted to show up. So I had to kind of make this change. Okay, I need to give more time to that. How can I do that? How can I make it sustainable? So I think just opening up to different ways of living, and definitely requires a lot of trust in just kind of in yourself, for one thing, trusting that you can take the right steps, or at least attempt the right steps, and just knowing, like, no matter what happens, everything will be okay. It will work out one way or the other. It'll either be a lesson or it'll be a step forward. So it kind of just takes, I think, that time of going inward, whether that's meditation or walking, even just like doing some kind of mindfulness in order to kind of open up what the answers might be.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's, excuse me, I think that's really good advice.
Yeah.
And sorry, did you want to?
I was just going to add maybe something a little more tangible, because I feel it's kind of like, yeah, think about it, which is nice. But, for me, something I really did a lot, even when I was in Nicaragua for the first time, I was still kind of like, what do I want to do? And, what's my life? Do I want to live here or there, or teach or not? And it really kind of took me finding people who were living a lifestyle I was attracted to, even if it wasn't what I thought I wanted for myself, and just talking to them, asking, like, just finding someone who's doing what you think you might want to do and talk to them, because it really makes such a difference when we see someone, like when we see it's possible. So I met a friend there, Gina, and just talking to her and telling her, I don't know, and this and that. And she was kind of the one to reflect it back to me, like, well, you're telling me you don't know what you want to do, but you're also telling me you're really happy doing this, and it's your dream to teach teachers and all of that. She's like, so it sounds like this is what you want to do. So sometimes it just kind of takes that reflection back to us.
Okay. Yeah, and I think talking to people, sometimes you just need people around you who are encouraging you. Even with this podcast, I have a friend who's constantly giving me like feedback, and he's always like, oh, I loved this, or like, you should talk about this. And it's like, even just hearing that little bit, it's like encourages you to keep going. So I think definitely who you surround yourself with is really important. And yeah, just like opening up and talking to different types of people,
Yeah,
and even just
exactly.
change our perspectives on things. Awesome.
Yeah.
So what is something that you are like excited about right now?
Oh, I love that.
Could be, you could go any direction with this one.
Amazing. I'm super excited actually to go. This is kind of, oh, not really random, but anyways, I'm going to Bhakti Fest in
Okay.
September. So this is kind of like a yoga music festival.
Really?
Yeah, like a clean, yoga, good vibes kind of thing. And I'm excited because it's just more of the things I want to be doing. So Bhakti means devotion in Sanskrit, from Sanskrit, and it's like, opening ourselves up to the greater practice, I think, which is something I've really been leaning into a lot lately, is practicing through song and singing mantras and things like that. It's kind of a little piece of myself that I think I've just kind of uncovered in the last 6 months or so. So this is an exciting piece right now that I'm, really looking forward to.
That sounds really awesome. And where is that?
Oh, it's in California in Joshua Tree.
Oh my gosh,
So
that
it'll be my
sounds
first time
amazing.
there also, so very
Cool.
exciting.
Yeah, I've heard really good things about Joshua Tree, so that's exciting.
Cool.
Um, who is someone that has been really influential in your life, maybe in the past like year or so?
I think I will come back to my friend Gina, because it really was that moment. Like, I can see it perfectly, exactly where we were sitting and everything, where I was telling her about where I was at and where I wanted to be in this kind of gap in between. And she really encouraged me to take the leap. And I had actually applied to a yoga school to teach on their teacher trainings, and things went well, and then I just didn't hear anything for a while. And I was telling her about that, and she's like, okay, but like, have you done this? Have you done that? And I was kind of just like, oh, actually, I guess I need to take a little more action. And she was the one to encourage me to do that, and that opportunity led to so many others. So I think, in the past, in this kind of change in my life, she's been hugely influential.
Oh, that's exciting. I love that. Yeah, sometimes you just need that push. And like,
Yeah.
yeah, I've definitely experienced that. I feel like it's a great reminder for people to just like also be there for their friends in that way as much as you can, because you never know what like positive words you give to someone actually can stick with them and help them and encourage them to kind of take that leap of faith. So I think that's
Exactly.
really, yeah, you got to surround yourself with good people for sure.
Yeah.
And one thing I liked that you said about going to the festival that you're going to, is it's like more things of what you want to be surrounded with. And one thing I talk a lot about is kind of living intentionally. And for me, that stems in like, okay, the actions you're taking, the thoughts you're thinking, and like who you surround yourself with. So I love that you're being really intentional of like, okay, this is something I want to explore more of. So let me go and do these new things that still center around the things that I love.
Right. Yeah.
I'd love to know, what's one of your favorite memories from traveling?
Wow.
I mean, I know that's like so broad,
That's a tough.
but maybe from like teaching and traveling.
Yeah. It's been honestly such a joy. Like, just, of course, there's so many challenges, of course, but um, I think when I first went to Peru and taught on this teacher training, I was feeling so nervous. It was my first time teaching on a teacher training. So this is teaching people how to teach yoga.
Okay.
And I was, I knew I had value and a lot to teach, but it was also like huge imposter syndrome.
Okay.
And when I arrived, I just felt like so supported by the people there and the other teachers and the people running the school. And I just felt, I already felt a little sense of home. So it's kind of more, I guess, more of a longer term memory. But I think just that feeling of arriving and being around these people, like you were saying, kind of surrounding yourself with the right people. But I didn't even have any control over that. It was just whoever was there. But somehow I just felt like immediately we were building each other up, and they had so much to offer so much of value, and it was so different from what I was there to teach. So it was really kind of a special moment when we came to realize that, I think, it's like how different we were.
And what are some of, you mentioned that there's a lot of challenges. What are some of the challenges that you've kind of faced and had to overcome throughout these experiences?
A lot of challenges just around even like things like transport. For example, I was traveling in end of May with a friend in Peru. We were traveling from the Amazon jungle up north to beaches to go surfing. And normally it would be a 12-hour overnight bus ride. And ours actually took 24 hours.
Wow.
So, yeah, and it was like, completely out of our control. We were supposed to arrive at 5 a.m. and I woke up on the bus at 6 a.m. and realized that we were stopped. And I just thought, I saw people like walking in and out of the bus. So I thought, oh, like we're at a rest stop. Oh, I might as well get up, stretch my leg, get a coffee since, we're a little bit behind schedule. So I get out and realize, oh no, actually we're in the middle of the highway. There's a mountain on this side and a waterfall over there, and there's no coffee. and
there's nothing. Yeah.
There's nothing. And actually we've already been stopped for 4 hours. And then we were still, like, we're just stopped in the middle of the highway. Don't really know why, something with the road, but no answers. And we were actually stopped at a standstill for almost 9 hours there. So that was, one of those moments where it's like, okay, you can be upset and stress and be mad at the company or whatever you want to, whoever you would direct that to. But I was so grateful to be traveling with another yoga teacher and, just to be with somebody even.
Yeah.
Just to laugh about it and say, okay, well, what can, it's not what we would choose, but, but what can you do?
For sure. And I feel like sometimes those moments, like in the moment, it can be so hard to like surrender, but it makes a great story afterwards. Like all the fun kind of challenges, I think once we get through them, it's like, okay, we'll laugh about this, so it'll be fine. And now it's a good story. Yeah.
Yeah, they always turn out to be a good story.
For sure. Okay, is there any other like pieces of advice that you would give kind of in a general sense of, in terms of like mindset or just going for your passions, anything that we haven't touched on?
Yeah. I think a big piece for me is to just continue to ground into awareness. Like I always remind people of awareness in the yoga practice, and then of course how that translates to our life practice, is the sooner we can recognize, that we're either out of the moment simply or recognize like a negative self-talk, sooner we can recognize any of that, then the sooner we can course correct and bring ourselves back to where we want to be or where we want to head. So, even in these challenges, like I've had, endless flight delays, flight cancellations, all this stuff traveling. And I'm not, of course, perfect. I get upset too and been in tears at the airport. But it's really that moment as soon as I can be like, wait, what is this worrying adding to the situation? It's actually taking my energy out of finding a solution. So I think the sooner that we can kind of bring our awareness back to the moment, then the sooner we can get back to living more grounded and experiencing more peace and, of course, being more present, all of those things tied together. So I think really the practice of awareness is everything.
Okay. I mean, you said it perfectly. The more aware you are, the more you can bring it back.
Yeah.
And find like solution-oriented thinking. Because when we're so upset, it's like you can't find a solution.
Yeah, it's so cloudy. You're just focusing on the problem, and then the problem just keeps getting bigger in your mind anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, is there any other things that you want to share? Or actually, where can we find you? What's your website, Instagram, all that?
So I am online, Lakeshore Flow. So
Okay.
this is on Instagram, Lakeshore Flow, website, lakeshoreflow.ca.com. Yes, everything's on there. I've got online classes. I work one-to-one with people. I do yoga teacher mentoring. And I've got a retreat coming up September 30th in Cambridge, Ontario. It's going to be a one-day retreat at Langdon Hall. And so that's just being released today. And then retreats abroad, Nicaragua, Morocco coming up. So to be found all online.
Okay, that's so exciting. I'm going to have to go and check out what you're doing next.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Emily, for talking to me today. I feel like I'm definitely inspired to do a little bit of yoga and try to stick with it because, it is challenging, but I think there's so much value in learning to appreciate it and taking it with you.
Exactly. That's it. Trying and learning. That's what it's all
Yeah,
about.
I love it. Okay, thank you so much, Emily.
Thank you for
And
having me.
everyone, yeah, and everyone, we will chat with you next time.